and then there'll be like 4 separate feathers in the actual wing. But that's up to you if you want to follow that method or not. Okay. Now that this is a very, very messy sketch, you know. So now we're going to go on to a cleaner sketch, so you can actually see where all your details are going to be. The pony I'm going to be drawing today is just one of my ponies, so it's going to be Sparklebubbles, and her other eye doesn't show here, and that's just her, because she has a really big mane. You don't generally, this leg right here, that line, you can see here it doesn't really go far into the body. It just kind of stays right there. That again, that's a preference. I see it change a lot in the show itself. I don't usually bring it up that high. Okay, so now let me get rid of this bottom sketch. And, I don't know, what do you think? I think it matches pretty well. I'm going to bring her mane down a little bit more, because as you can see, their manes are pretty big. Oops. Alright, now this is just a little detail, and you can add it or not. From what I don't usually notice this on other people's drawings, but some people do. So once you've got the actual shape of your hoof down, some people add in like this little piece that just kind of flattens out there at the bottom. And you'll notice it right here on Twilight. See, if I were to extend this line down, it's like that, and then they just kind of added this little right here. That's up to you. I personally don't care, but it does add a certain quaintness to the show, because as they step down, this part like flattens out, and it kind of gives it the illusion, you know, that they're actually walking. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to include that, just simply because I don't really care for that. I don't think it looks good. But if you want to make it like super realistic to the actual style of the show, then yeah, go ahead and do that. Just pointing it out there. Okay. So one thing people always try to do, or I'm always hearing them ask, is about these lines. These lines that you see here. They're really smooth, and they're very thick. Not a lot of variation to them. Even when they come here into the actual body, they don't even really taper all that much. They're just kind of thick and there. So I'm using Paint Tool Psi, and how I do that on this program is I fade that out and put a new layer on top of it. I always start with black, and I always start with a pretty thick line. And now, up at the top bar, there is things like, you know, your selection area, how much it's zoomed in, all that. Well, there's something called a stabilizer. And by default in Psi, that's always on 0. Well, I like to drop down the menu and put it on about anywhere between 6.4 to 6.7. 6-7 is the best for really thick lines that need quick tapering, so like My Little Pony lines. So basically what this brush does is it slows everything down. So it'll keep your hand stable the slower you go. So here, you saw that line was really, really skinny because I was going so quick. But with the pressure on, I went slower and got a thinner line, or a more stable line. I'm going to bring the size down a little bit. So if you've got a tablet, you're going to want to press down pretty hard for most of it, just to keep the thick line going. But you're going to want to start lightly for that taper, and then transition pretty quickly to the actual line art. Now here at the end, I'm going to taper a little bit, but just a little. Tapering again. And so here, I've got a very thick line, light tapering. It's a little thicker than what's going on over here, but, you know, that's just trial and error. Now over here, the inner line of the ear, it's important to notice that it's actually pretty thin and tapered on both ends, so that's what you want to do. Okay, so onto the eye. Notice that the actual black part of her eye isn't even that thick, and it doesn't taper all that much. But that's the part we're going to be working with. Onto her eyelashes, you know, see, basic eyelashes. And I don't, on the this is the line art layer, I don't usually start on the eye, on the line art layer. I usually make the white part of the eye actually part of the color palette, and the iris in its own layer, in between the color palette and the line art. But I'll get to that here pretty soon. Their nostrils are just kind of like a little U, not really much to them. The important thing to remember about My Little Pony is just a lot of soft curves and few angles, that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm done with the line art. Now it's time to go on to the coloring. So I'm just going to skip to the finished color palette. Here's the color palette, and I will start with the white of the eye. I'm on the color palette layer. So from right here, I'm just going to go out in an almond shape from the eye. And that one's kind of squinty, so let me do that again. There we go. That's better. Okay, so now that you've got the almond shape of the eye, I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. This is just the white of the eye. And you can clean it up however you see fit, whatever, you know. But in between the line art and the color layer, I'm going to make a new layer and just call this iris. And I'm pretty much going to work, this whole layer is pretty much just for